Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back. Kellen here with Droid Life. So we're taking a look today at the entire Moto family. We have the Moto X, the flagship. We also have the Moto G, and then the new guy on the block, which is the Moto E. So we did a unboxing of the Moto E earlier today, talked about its specs and sort of who the device is for and things like that. What we thought we'd do is compare it to the other two, though, so you can sort of understand this whole lineup here. The Moto E versus the G versus the X, all that sort of thing. So quick recap, though, on the specs. The Moto E has a 4.3-inch QHD display, a 1.2 gigahertz dual-core Snapdragon 200 processor, 1 gig of RAM. It has a 5 megapixel camera on the back with no flash, which I just realized, a 1980 milliamp hour battery, 4 gigs of internal storage. You do have micro SD slot support, so you can add on an extra 32 gigs. We have GSM global roaming capabilities, and then you actually have swappable back covers, or Motorola shells, I believe they call them. And this guy retails for $129, and that is without a contract. So it's a phone priced for all. As far as the Moto G goes, you were looking at a 4.5-inch HD display, that's 720p. You have a 1.2 gigahertz quad-core Snapdragon 400 processor, 1 gig of RAM, 8 or 16 gigabytes of storage, depending on which you go with, a 2070 milliamp hour battery, a 5 megapixel camera, and this does have a flash, and it retails for $179 or $199, depending on how much storage you want, either 8 or 16 gigabytes. So if we kind of compare these side by side, obviously the big deal here is the display. The Moto G is slightly larger, and the phone itself is then going to be slightly larger. You can also see up here we do have a 1.3 megapixel front camera on the Moto G, and the Moto E does not have a front camera to obviously save costs on there. You'll also notice on the back, and I pointed this out, that there is a flash on the Moto G. There's no flash on the Moto E. In terms of hardware, those are kind of the only differences. If we look up top, you've got your headphone jacks up top in the same spot, along with noise canceling mics. On the bottom, you have micro USB ports in the exact same spots. On the sides, you have your power and volume rocker switches in the exact same spots. And then even on this left side, you just have nothing, essentially. So again, there's not a big difference between the two, and both devices are for emerging markets. They're not necessarily flagship type devices. They're supposed to be incredibly affordable, which they are, and it's Motorola's attempt to get them into everyone's hands. So let's open up the backs here, which I struggle with every time on the Moto G. There we go. So back off there, and let's pull this off the Moto E. So again, you can take the backs off of these and purchase Motorola shells through Motorola's site, and you get all sorts of different colors, so you can really kind of customize your device if you'd like. Not exactly like the Moto X, but you can at least add some flair to it, change the colors up and stuff like that. So with both backs off, you can see non-removable batteries. On the Moto G, you have a SIM slot. Now, this is the GSM model, and no SD card slot, though the new LTE model does have an SD card, so SD card slot. On the Moto E, you do have SIM and SD card slots there. And you know what? That's kind of the only difference. Again, the Moto G is $179 and $199. The Moto E is $129. So it's kind of a step up, though not exactly a major step up. But it is the sort of difference there, which is, again, not much. So the other comparison I want to do then is the Moto X. So this is obviously the flagship. You are looking at a 4.7-inch HD display that's also 720p, a 1.7 gigahertz Snapdragon S4 Pro dual-core processor, but that does also include Motorola's X8 mobile computing. You have 2 gig of RAM, a 10 megapixel camera with flash, and then you also have a 2 megapixel camera up front. You can get either 16 or 32 gigabytes of internal storage. There are no micro SD card slots in the Moto X. You do have a 2200 milliamp hour battery, though, on the back. And then, of course, the big selling point is Moto Maker and the custom backs and the custom accents and either white or black fronts. And so, and obviously I have the bamboo, so you can go wood or natural back. So the Moto Maker is the big deal here. You cannot remove the back cover. So it's one of those things you customize up front, and then you're sort of stuck with your device. Whereas the other two devices, you can kind of swap backs depending on your mood if you'd really like to. So if we compare these, obviously Moto X is a little bit bigger. It's got a bigger display, even though the Moto E has a giant chin on it. But all the buttons are in the same place. You know, the headphone jack's in the same place. Camera's in the same sort of location, although there is that flash on the Moto X. Both have dimples on the back. And there's your headphone jacks. Nothing on this side other than a SIM tray for the Moto X. Again, no micro SD cards on the Moto X. Then here are your micro USB ports here down on the bottom. You know, that's sort of it in terms of hardware. There's not a lot of difference between many of these. So you can see Motorola is really trying to establish sort of design idea or guidelines for their phones. But on all three, you do have a on-screen button, so you can swipe up to Google Now. They all are also running almost stock Android. Motorola is doing very little customizations to any of these, and so you can see they're both running 4.4.2, but it looks mostly stock. You know, your pages are all basically stock. The icons are mostly stock. A lot of them are, you know, Google apps. And so yeah, there's not a lot of differences here other than that front camera, the flash on the back, and a little bit of display size. And same thing with the Moto X. Although Moto X being the flagship, you do get some of those extra cool features which we love, like active display and touchless control. So I could say, "Okay, Google Now," and it will pop up "Okay, Google Now," and it'll ask me if I want, you know, to do a search or something like that. You know, you're not going to get that with the Moto E. So it doesn't have the X8. It doesn't have all of the extra sensors and things like that you got in the Moto X. So, but then again, you know, the Moto X is the flagship here, so you wouldn't expect that all to be there. But overall, though, that's kind of it. You know, this is their lineup. The Moto X retails normally for about $399, though you've seen it discounted all the way down to $299 and $325 and things like that. You know, we'll get a new Moto X soon. I'm not sure when we'll get a new Moto G, but I'd imagine there'll be another one in the pipeline. And then the Moto E is obviously brand new, so it's kind of the newest guy on the block. But that's pretty much it. If you guys have anything else or want to know anything specific, just let us know. And we are Droid Life. We're out. Peace.